The midday sun bathed the small, bustling town in a warm light. Gregory Harrow, CEO of one of the country's fastest-growing restaurant chains, stepped out of his sleek black car, wearing a simple shirt and jeans. Today, he was not Mr. Harrow, the visionary leader. Today, he was just Greg, a curious man eager to see how his restaurants truly operated when no one knew he was the boss. He stepped into one of his flagship locations, a cozy establishment nestled on the corner of a busy street. The aroma of sizzling burgers and freshly baked buns filled the air. The place was packed. Families, couples, and groups of friends sat at tables, chatting and laughing. Gregory's heart swelled with pride. This was his dream come to life. The line at the counter was long, giving him plenty of time to observe. The staff bustled behind the counter, efficiently taking orders, flipping patties, and serving trays. Gregory's sharp eye caught a few moments of disorganization. A trainee fumbling with the register, a server spilling a drink, but he also noticed the camaraderie among the staff. It reminded him of why he'd started this business, to create something bigger than himself. As he waited, a faint whispering behind him caught his attention. Two boys, probably no older than 10, were standing together. Their voices were low, but Gregory's ears perked up as he overheard snippets of their conversation. "Do you think we have enough?" one boy asked, holding a handful of crumpled bills and loose coins. "I don't know," the other replied, his tone anxious. "Maybe we can share one meal. You can have most of it." "I ate yesterday." Gregory froze. His heart clenched as he tried to process what he'd just heard. He discreetly glanced back. The boys' faces were a mixture of hope and desperation. They huddled over their meager collection of change, counting and recounting. He turned back to the counter, his appetite suddenly gone. The thought of children struggling to afford a meal in one of his restaurants felt like a personal failure. When it was his turn to order, he leaned in close to the cashier, a young man named Liam, whose name tag was slightly askew. "I'll take whatever they want," Gregory whispered, gesturing subtly toward the boys. "Just make it look like they won something." Liam blinked, confused, but nodded. Gregory stepped aside and watched as the cashier called the boys to the counter. "Congratulations," Liam said, his voice cheerful. "You're our 100th customer of the day. You've won a free meal. Anything you want." The boys looked at each other, stunned. For a moment, Gregory worried they might not believe it. But then their faces broke into wide smiles. "Really?" one of them asked. "Really," Liam replied, grinning. The boys ordered modestly, a single burger meal to share. Gregory felt a pang but stayed silent. He watched as they took their tray to a corner table, their laughter filling the air as they split the food. Gregory was about to leave when he noticed something strange. A man in a dark jacket had been watching the boys too, his expression unreadable. The man followed them to their table and crouched down to speak to them. Gregory's instincts flared. Who was this man? A threat? He moved closer, pretending to adjust his phone. The man handed the boys something, a business card, and then left without another word. The boys looked at the card, their expressions shifting from confusion to excitement. Gregory couldn't help himself. He walked over to the boys' table and crouched down, his tone gentle. "Hey, everything okay?" "Who was that man?" The boys hesitated but eventually held up the card. It was a flyer for a local youth program offering free meals and educational workshops for underprivileged kids. Gregory's mind raced. He'd never heard of this program, but he realized it was exactly the kind of initiative his company should be supporting. He thanked the boys, wished them well, and stepped outside, dialing his assistant. "Find out everything about this program," he ordered. "I want to partner with them. Fund them, expand their reach, whatever it takes." As he hung up, Gregory's gaze drifted back to the restaurant window. The boys were still laughing, savoring every bite of their meal. A warmth spread through him, stronger than pride, stronger than success. Today wasn't just about checking on his restaurant. It was about realizing how much more he could do. And Gregory Harrow, Undercover CEO, knew his mission had only just begun. Gregory stood outside the restaurant for a moment, his mind spinning with ideas and possibilities. The interaction with the boys had struck a nerve deeper than he expected. But just as he was about to leave, the sight of flashing blue lights down the street drew his attention. A police car had pulled over near the alley beside the restaurant. Two officers were talking to a teenager, no older than 16, wearing a fast food uniform from the very restaurant Gregory had just left. The boy's face was pale, and he looked scared out of his wits. Gregory hesitated. He wasn't sure what was happening, but something about the situation didn't sit right with him. Unable to shake the feeling, Gregory approached slowly. As he got closer, he overheard fragments of the conversation. "You can't just take things from the back," one officer said sternly. "I wasn't stealing," the boy stammered, his voice cracking. I was just trying to help my sister. She's hungry." Gregory's steps quickened. He interjected, his tone calm but firm. "Excuse me, officers. What's going on here?" One of the officers turned to him, clearly annoyed at the interruption. This boy was caught taking food from the kitchen. Theft is theft. The teenager's eyes darted to Gregory, pleading silently for someone to believe him. Gregory's years of experience reading people kicked in. He could see the desperation and sincerity in the boy's face. "I'm sorry to intrude," Gregory said, pulling out his wallet and flashing his business card, which bore his title and the logo of the restaurant chain. "I'm the owner of this establishment. If he says he wasn't stealing, I'd like to hear him out." The officers exchanged glances, clearly taken aback. One of them muttered something under his breath before stepping aside. Gregory turned to the boy. "What's your name?" "Marcus," the teenager replied hesitantly. "Okay, Marcus, tell me what happened." Marcus explained in a shaky voice that his younger sister had been sick for weeks, and their family was struggling to make ends meet. He'd taken leftover food from the kitchen, hoping to feed her without causing trouble. He swore he hadn't meant any harm. Gregory felt a mix of anger and sadness. Not at Marcus, but at the fact that a boy working for his company felt he had no other choice but to sneak food for his family. "Officers," Gregory said, turning back to them, "this boy isn't a thief. If anything, this is on me for not ensuring my employees feel supported. I'd appreciate it if you let him go." After some grumbling, the officers relented and left. Marcus looked at Gregory, stunned. I don't know how to thank you," Marcus stammered. "Don't thank me yet," Gregory said, his tone serious. "Come with me." He led Marcus back into the restaurant and asked to speak with the manager. A tall, wiry man named Carl emerged from the back, his expression wary. "Carl, can you explain why one of your employees feels the need to sneak food to feed his family?" Gregory's voice was calm, but there was an edge to it that made Carl shift uncomfortably. I didn't know," Carl admitted. "He never said anything. Did you ever ask?" Gregory pressed. "Do you know anything about your team's lives outside of these walls?" Carl's silence was answer enough. Gregory sighed, rubbing his temples. "Starting today, I want every location to establish an employee assistance program. If someone needs help, they should feel comfortable asking for it." "Got it?" Carl nodded quickly, looking thoroughly chastened. Gregory turned back to Marcus. "From now on, if you or your family needs anything, you come to me. Understand?" Marcus nodded, tears welling up in his eyes. "Thank you, sir." But Gregory wasn't done. As he left the restaurant, he found himself walking past the boys from earlier. They were now sitting on the curb, chatting happily as they finished their meal. He smiled, but his thoughts were interrupted by a faint shout from across the street. "Hey, you!" Gregory turned to see an elderly man running toward him, waving a small piece of paper. "I think you dropped this." The man handed Gregory a crumpled receipt. Confused, Gregory unfolded it. But it wasn't a receipt at all. It was a note, hastily scrawled in shaky handwriting. "If you're the owner, please read this. My daughter applied for a job here but was turned away. She has a disability, but she's one of the hardest workers you'll ever meet. Give her a chance. Please." Gregory stared at the note, his mind racing. Who had written this? Why hadn't he seen it earlier? Determined to find out, he turned back to the restaurant. There were more questions to ask, more stories to uncover. And Gregory Harrow knew this was only the beginning of a much bigger journey. Gregory folded the note carefully and slipped it into his pocket. The day, which had started as a casual undercover visit, had now turned into a whirlwind of revelations. He walked back into the restaurant, scanning the room for anyone who might be connected to the note. Was it one of the customers? A staff member? Someone passing by? He approached Liam, the cashier who had helped with the boys earlier. "Hey Liam," Gregory said casually. "Has anyone dropped off a note or asked to speak with the manager about a job recently?" Liam furrowed his brow, thinking, "Not that I can remember today, sir. But last week, a woman came in asking about opportunities for her daughter. She left looking upset. I think Carl talked to her." Gregory's jaw tightened. Another issue that landed squarely at Carl's feet. He thanked Liam and headed for the back office where Carl was hunched over a clipboard. Carl, Gregory began, his voice calm but laced with authority. Did someone recently inquire about a job for their disabled daughter? Carl blinked, his expression blank for a moment before recognition dawned. Oh yes, that was about a week ago. She said her daughter was deaf, and I just didn't think she'd be a good fit for the team. This job requires constant communication. Gregory's eyes narrowed. So you didn't even give her a chance? Didn't think about accommodations? Didn't consider the optics of turning someone away without a fair interview? Carl stammered, clearly caught off guard. I just didn't think. No, you didn't think. Gregory cut him off sharply. Let me make this clear. Our company doesn't discriminate. We provide equal opportunities, and if someone has the drive to work, we make it possible for them. Do you even know how hard it is for someone with a disability to get a fair shot? Carl hung his head. You're right. I'm sorry. I'll do better. You'll have to, Gregory said firmly. Now, I want you to find this woman. Call her and invite her daughter for an interview. And if you can't find her, we'll post something publicly to ensure she knows we're looking for her. Carl nodded, scrambling to take notes. Gregory left the office, feeling both anger and determination coursing through him. He would not let this slide, not under his watch. As Gregory stepped back into the dining area, he noticed the two boys from earlier standing by the soda machine, whispering again. Curious, he wandered over. What's on your minds, boys? He asked with a kind smile. They jumped slightly, not expecting anyone to overhear them. One of the boys hesitated before saying, We were just wondering if there's any food left over at the end of the day. Gregory's heart sank. Why do you ask? Well, the other boy said nervously, sometimes we see people throwing away food, and we thought maybe if it's going to be tossed out, we could take it. Gregory crouched down to their level, looking them both in the eyes. You shouldn't have to dig through garbage to eat. How about this? You two come here whenever you're hungry. I'll make sure there's always a meal for you, no questions asked. Deal? The boys' faces lit up with disbelief and gratitude. Really? One of them asked. Really? Gregory said, his voice steady. But you have to promise me something in return. What? They asked in unison. You work hard in school, he said. Do your best. Make me proud. And one day you'll be the ones helping others. Deal? The boys nodded enthusiastically. Gregory smiled and sent them on their way, feeling a spark of hope for the future. The rest of the day was a blur. Gregory stayed at the restaurant longer than he'd intended, observing every detail, talking to staff, and jotting down notes on how to improve operations. Before he left, he called his assistant again. I want a company-wide review of our hiring policies, he said. We need better training for managers, more inclusive practices, and a formal system for employees to request help. And set up a meeting with that youth program I mentioned earlier. I want them as a partner. As he drove home, Gregory reflected on everything he'd learned that day. The stories of struggle, resilience, and quiet acts of courage had touched him deeply. He knew he couldn't fix everything overnight, but he could start small, one restaurant, one employee, one family at a time. And as he pulled into his driveway, Gregory knew one thing for certain. Being a leader wasn't just about growing a business. It was about creating a legacy of compassion, fairness, and opportunity. The next morning, Gregory arrived at the corporate office with a renewed sense of purpose. He called an emergency meeting with his executive team, detailing everything he had witnessed the previous day. His voice was steady but impassioned as he shared the stories of Marcus, the boys, and the mother who had been turned away. This company started with a mission to serve the community, Gregory said, but somewhere along the way we've lost sight of what that means. It's not just about food. It's about people, our employees, our customers, and everyone in between. If we want to lead, we need to do better. The team listened in stunned silence. Gregory's reputation as a decisive, results-driven CEO preceded him, but this was a side of him they hadn't seen before. Personal, deeply invested, and unwavering in his commitment to change. Over the next few weeks, Gregory's vision began to take shape. The company launched a new initiative called Second Chances, focused on hiring individuals from underserved communities, including people with disabilities, former offenders, and those facing economic hardship. Each restaurant location received training on inclusive hiring practices and employee support programs. Marcus was promoted to a shift leader role, with his schedule adjusted to allow him to care for his sister. Gregory personally reached out to the mother who had left the note, apologizing for her earlier experience and offering her daughter a position. The young woman, a quiet but determined individual, became one of the restaurant's most reliable employees. She even taught her co-workers basic sign language, which became a bonding experience for the team. The two boys who had been asking about leftover food became regulars at the restaurant. Gregory partnered with local charities to provide free meals to children in need, ensuring no child in the community would go hungry. Months later, the impact of Gregory's efforts was evident. Employee morale was at an all-time high, customer satisfaction soared, and the restaurant chain became a model for socially conscious business practices. Gregory received national recognition for his leadership, but he remained humble, often deflecting credit to his team and the community members who had inspired the changes. One afternoon, as Gregory visited the same restaurant where his journey had begun, he noticed Marcus standing behind the counter, confidently managing the busy lunch rush. Nearby, the boys were laughing over their meals, and the young woman with the disability was teaching a new coworker how to sign thank you. Gregory felt a profound sense of fulfillment. For the first time in years, he wasn't just a CEO. He was a part of something bigger, something meaningful. As he sat at a corner table, quietly observing the bustling scene, a customer approached him. "You're Gregory Harrow, right?" The CEO, the man asked, holding out a hand. "I just wanted to say thank you. This place has changed my son's life. And mine too." Gregory shook the man's hand, his heart swelling with pride and gratitude. "It's not just me," he said with a smile. "It's all of us working together." And as the man walked away, Gregory looked around the restaurant one last time, feeling a deep sense of peace. He knew this was only the beginning, but for now it was enough. The seeds of change had been planted, and they were flourishing. Gregory's journey shows how a single decision can ripple through an entire community. What would you have done if you were in his shoes? Have you ever witnessed or experienced a moment of unexpected kindness that changed someone's life? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this story and want to hear more inspiring tales, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to our channel, and hit the notification bell so you never miss an update. Your support helps us share more stories that truly matter.